A few years back, I added some terrific trough planters to my collection of growing containers on our sunny back deck. Made to order from zincalume, I set them up as wicking planters by installing a layer of expanded clay balls in the bottom with geotextile fabric on top of them, and then quality potting mix. The clay balls create a water-holding reservoir, and drainage holes ensure that it can't be overfilled. The soil stays consistently moist, which is just perfect for plants that love damp conditions. I put in some betel leaf, kangkong, and Moroccan mint. Well, I'm really happy with that. The deck's feeling greener already, and I can't wait to see these things really take off and lush this place up. And they really did take off and provided plenty of leaves for picking. And if you want to see how I made them, you can go to the Gardening Australia website for a step-by-step process. But now, a few years on, well, the plants are looking a little tired, which is a good sign that it's time to reinvigorate them. After this period of time, these plants will no doubt be root-bound, and the potting mix will be tired. So the whole thing needs a refresh. Whoa, check out just how congested this is. You can see how the roots have grown through and around the geotextile fabric and have gotten right in to the clay ball layer. It's pretty easy to see. This is certainly ready for a revamp. By standing the slab of mint on its side, I can easily scrape the clay balls away. They just need a good rinse, and then they can go back into the planter, making sure they sit at the same level as the drainage holes. Then a new layer of geotextile fabric can go on top, followed by fresh potting mix. Right, well, there's plenty of good planting material here. It's just going to be a matter of pulling it apart to free up some material to put back into the planter. There's a pretty way to do this. Just got to pull it apart. There we go. You can see. What I'm after, really, are those lovely, fresh, healthy, pale rhizomes. They are the pieces of the plant that will take off quickest and then put new leaves on. I'm just working my way around and tearing off clumps with fresh white rhizomes and some foliage. The roots can be trimmed back so they're easy to replant. I'll give these a good watering once the plant is back on top of the wall because of the weight, and the mint will come good within a couple of weeks. I'll repeat this process for the betel leaf and the kangkong, and my wicking planters will be pumping again in no time.